Good morning, everyone. Britt Simon here. How are you doing? So let's talk about DV lottery. I just want to make sure I got things set up here correctly. It's a Saturday morning here in California. I hope you're all doing well. We're kind of suffering with cold weather here. It hit something like 15 degrees centigrade, and everyone's freaking out. It's even been raining in Southern California. People have been drowning in some of the rain. I'm joking, of course. We're very privileged in California to have exceptionally good weather all year round. Okay, let's take some questions. When is starting DV 2027? We don't know yet. It's not been announced. I admire everyone's consistency and persistence in asking the same question over and over again, but we don't know. And until it's announced, we won't know. And when it is announced, believe me, I will be shouting it from the rooftops, and you can bet it. A lot of people will be as well. Okay. Okay. So hello, Simon, AF2000. I got an email yesterday to confirm my 25th of January interview. Good. But travel docs shows no slots. Is it a system update today? No. Look, so you have to, many of you get this particular thing wrong. When you are when you're given a 2NL from KCC, you know already what date you have. You have the 25th of January, right? And so they ask you as part of the instructions to make an account with travel docs, US travel docs, or various sites. There are different sites used in different embassies, which is one of the reasons I don't make a video on that, because it's specific to your embassy. But in all cases, you have a series of options to choose, and you're only trying to create an account. You're not trying to create an appointment. So you're telling me there are no slots. No slots meaning there's no appointments available. Why are you trying to get an appointment? You already have one, right? And the fact that you're asking me about the no slots means you've already done it wrong earlier in the process. So you have to choose the right options, and it varies on the different websites, which is, as I say, that's why I don't go into detail. But there are options where you're choosing to create an account, or you're choosing to create an appointment, and you don't want to create an appointment because you already have one. Okay, so if you see a message that says no slots, it means you've already picked the wrong options. You need to go back, and as long as you've created a system, an account in the system, you're pretty good to go. You don't need an appointment. Okay, you're not trying to register your appointment. They know about your bloody appointment. So stop trying to worry about whether there's slots. Okay, that's what's going on there. Good morning to you in Kenya, in Tbilisi. Another one in Kenya. That's awesome. I love this. I love this aspect of where you all are in the world. I love it. Good morning, DV27. Is it going to be a thing? Yes, it's going to be a thing. The government posted an update, which I created a video on, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks ago, saying that obviously they are obliged to run the process. It's not something that they can just decide on the fly year to year. This is legally required to them by law. Okay, they have to run the lottery process. However, in this particular case, because they're adding the $1 fee, they have delayed the entry period, right? They may also be trying to add the passport rule, but that passport rule has not been officially announced as a rule yet. So that's that's still not 100% sure in my mind that they're going to do the passport rule. But they will do, and they have said they will have an entry period for DV 2027. That's not in doubt at all. So yes, it's going to happen. It's just delayed. Okay. It's in Dubai. It's 8:22 p.m. Good evening to you, and good morning to you, Toko. Hi, Bryce. Apparently, I'm called Bryce. I guess you're doing well. Yes, I'm doing well. Thank you. Thank you for asking. But Bryce is not my name. We cannot enter dv.state.gov. Yeah, dvprogram.state.gov. Which is the main site for the entry process and so on. And also the ESC page, which is where you check your results, normally in May, but it's going to be different next year, of course. But those sites are down, and they've been down for 3 days now. Now, lots of people have run around saying, oh, this is great news. It means that they're doing an update. It doesn't take 3 days. If anybody is in IT and technology world, you know it doesn't take 3 days to do an update, right? When you do an update, you push the update, it goes live. And if something breaks straight away, you revert the update. You pull it back out, right? And unless you're a 14-year-old child that pretends to do IT, you know how to do that, right? But apparently the government hires 13-year-old children and they don't know how to do that. And so they break the bloody website, and it's stayed broken now for 3 days. The American government are a bunch of clowns at times. They really are. How they ever have achieved anything in this world is beyond me. It's just an amazingly fertile, rich, natural resource that they have. And based on that, they've done very well, despite the fact that they could not organize a piss up in the brewery. That's basically the American government. And it doesn't matter whether it's Trump or whether it's Biden or whether it's Bush or Clinton, they're all the same. The level of incompetence in the American government is almost unbelievable. And many of you think I'm joking about that. Many of you think that I must be wrong. But honestly, once you get here and you start sort of looking at what the government does in various things, it's unbelievably dumb. And this DV program .state.gov being down for 3 days is just another example of that. It's a shambles. And so, yeah, they probably tried to push some sort of change, and they've probably screwed that up, and they've been unable to revert it. It's just madness. It doesn't matter at the moment, and I don't take that as being a good sign. Many of you have taken that as a good sign, thinking that they're about to sort of make some big change for DV lottery, but it doesn't take 3 days to make a change on a website. It just doesn't, folks. So, sorry. That's not what's going on. It's just stupidity. It's nothing good. So there you go. It's raining in Virginia too. Of course it's raining in Virginia. It's like, if it weren't raining in Virginia, it's like saying in England, being surprised that England rains in the middle of the summer. No, that's normal. That's normal that it rains. I know America is a country of institution and counterpower. Ooh. But do you think it worth to emigrate there in Trump, Vance, USA? Yes, it is, because Trump, Vance won't always be here. And so you make the preparations now, and you come to America now, and if you the economy is taken a hit because these buffoons don't know what the hell they're doing. So the economy is suffering right now. Prices, the cost of living in the USA has risen tremendously, and the cost of, or the benefit of the wages hasn't increased in the same pace. That's actually going to get much worse. The tariffs are a stupid idea, just moronic. Only a child thinks that's a good idea. Moronic idea. And then they've devalued the dollar against every other currency, by mistake, frankly, not really deliberately. That means that anything they buy from abroad is going to cost more money in the USA, and that's also inflationary within the USA. It does mean that we can sell our goods abroad easier, but nobody wants to buy crappy American goods. Nobody wants to buy a crappy American truck. If you live in the UK or you live in Spain or something, you don't want a bloody enormous truck that does, 9 miles to the gallon. You don't want that piece of crap. So we don't sell our American trucks abroad. Big surprise, right? Never have done, never will. Why would you buy a Chevy truck, enormous bloody urban assault vehicle, when you live in Europe? Why would you do that? You wouldn't do that. You'd go and buy an Audi or a Merc or a BMW or something, because they're better quality cars, and they don't they don't destroy the planet every time they drive another mile. So no. America is kind of dopey, definitely. But this dopiness will sort of eventually sort of relent to being better times again, right? Trump and Vance are about to become, if they're not already, a lame duck presidency. They're going to lose power in the next election cycle, which is in the midterms. That means that they'll be sort of somewhat neutered. They won't be able to push through quite as much change as they have been doing. That's why they've been rushing so much with all this change. And they'll possibly have to negotiate and do something a bit more sensible. So we'll see how that goes on for the next couple of years. But I think after 4 years of a Trump-Vance presidency, I think people will have had enough of that sort of stupidity, and we'll return to somewhat of a normal country again. Hopefully the economy will recover, and things will be better. Fundamentally, there are still good people in America. There are 30% of people that are morons, and they vote for Trump, of course. But there are a lot of other people who don't vote for that crap, and even some of those people that wanted some of those things, who voted for that crap, are now realizing that crap isn't working very well. So there's a lot of very, very good Americans, and there's a lot of very good places to live in America. And so, yes, it's still a good place to live. It still will be a good place to live. It's just a bit of a worrying time right now. Okay, so but if you're about to enter the DV 2027 lottery, for example, you won't move to America until roughly 2027. That's a long time away, right? That'll be after the next midterm election cycle. We'll be talking about the next presidential election. Hopefully certain orange people will have just disappeared by then, and we'll be in much better shape. We'll have to see. Do you think we would skip it this year? No, of course we're not going to skip it. I've already explained that. Okay, let me see. I'm seeing, I'm a Nigerian and my wife is from Uganda. Can I apply? Good question. Nigeria is one of the ineligible countries. And considering the rate at which Nigeria family reunification goes on, it's unlikely that Nigeria will ever be eligible for the lottery again. Once a country goes over 50,000 immigrants per 5-year period in 3 specific classes, they become ineligible for the lottery. So Nigeria is not eligible and probably won't ever be eligible again. But Uganda is. So when you want to enter the lottery, you can both apply. Your wife would apply. Question number 5 at the moment in the DV lottery entry form is your country of birth. And she would obviously apply as Uganda as being her country of birth. And in question 6, she would leave that alone, right? Question 6 is your country of chargeability if it is not the same as your country of birth, which means for most people, they don't touch question 6. You should not touch question number 6, right? In your case, you're Nigerian. So you put in question number 5, you put Nigeria as your place of birth. And in question 6, you answer Uganda as your country of chargeability, which would be through your wife. Okay. Now you have to be married, legally married, prior to the entry, of course, right? It can't be, and you can't be, she can't be your 3rd wife or your 4th wife or something like that in terms of, polygamous marriage. It has to be your first, and actually it should be your only wife. But yes, you can take her country of birth as your country of chargeability. So that's how you do it. Question 6. When you go for an interview, you're both treated as principal applicants. In other words, she must qualify at the same time as you qualify for immigration. You actually even have to enter the USA at the same time for the first time as well, because you're basing your chargeability on her country of birth. So you're connected a little bit more than a normal case. Okay. Good morning, Lucas James Parry. ESC page is down. Irritating as my DS260 page says London in the top right. Okay, so you've you've had your 2NL, but yes, you can't see it because you can't get into the ESC page. That is frustrating. Yeah, this is the downside at the moment, just for those people that are trying to confirm their 2NL or their interview location. The ESC page being down is the problem for that. You don't see your appointment details, but that's going to be in January, right? And so, there's plenty of time for them to fix this problem, even though they're a bunch of Muppets. There's time for them to fix this problem. If you want, Lucas, you can email KCC and they will tell you the date of your interview. However, they won't tell you the time, oddly. I don't know why. But they have enough information to know the date of your interview, and you just won't know the time. But at least you can sort of start to work towards that. If the ESC page remains down for long enough, you may want to do that. You may want to email KCC because you need to arrange your medical, right? And sometimes the physicians won't allow you to arrange the medical unless you have proof that you are actually going to be interviewed. And so you would then show them the letter from the email that you get from KCC. Okay. All right. Eve from Kenya, any updates for GreenCard? Yeah, lots of updates. Just have to be a bit more specific about your questions, Eve. The site ain't loading. What's the problem, boss? Yeah, it's broken. They're a bunch of Muppets. That's what the problem is. Good morning, Britt. Thanks for wonderful work you are doing in the DV27. Is the DV27 going to be there or until next year? I'm hoping that DV 2027 entry period starts in December. I'm hoping that, but I have no information or reason to assume that. The only thing that makes me think that it's going to be sooner rather than later is that there has to be a gap. I think I've touched on this before, but there has to be a gap between the entry period and the announcement of the results. And that gap is actually part of the CSPA law. CSPA is Child Status Prevention Act, right? No, Child Status Protection Act. Why would it be prevention? It's protection, and it protects a child's status as you have a child who is nearing 21 on the date that you enter the DV lottery, but is not yet 21. You are required to include that child in your entry, right? But then that child becomes 21 years old, let's say before your interview, and there is a thing in the CSPA that adds a number of days onto their 21st birthday, and as long as you become current before that that time is reached, the 21 years and the number of days, then you can still get the derivative visa for that child, right? Now, that number of days that they add on to the 21st birthday is the gap between the entry period and the announcement of the results. It's typically around about 213 to 216 days, right? But it's a specific period of time. It's defined by law. It's part of the CSPA, and it depends on that gap, right? So if they reduce that gap, let's say they say, the entry period starts in, I don't know, let's say it started in March or something, and they still tried to announce the results in May, they would be reducing that gap, that 213 days. They would be reducing that, and that's that would cause someone to say, hang on a minute, you've taken my rights away, you altered the amount of CSPA protection, and therefore I'm going to sue you, right? And so everything is controlled by laws, and even though it seems innocuous to delay the entry period, it means they have to delay the announcement of the results because that is used in the CSPA formula. So that's why I think they need to hurry up and get on with this, because they can't delay too long. And the other thing is, of course, once they announce the results, which is normally in May, people start submitting the DS260s. But the DS260s have to be processed before the interviews can start. So the interviews are starting to be scheduled in August of each year for October interviews. That can only happen for the DS260s that have been processed. So if they push the May announcement of the results, let's say into July, there's very little time for them to actually process the DS260s before the October interviews start. So they cause another problem. So they can't just carry on forever delaying the entry period. It actually has to be done, I hope pretty soon. So there's some pressure on them. But I mean, you can see what these Muppets are like. 3 days outage on the DV program page, and it's like, okay, we broke it. Duh. Crazy. Is it safe to say our chances will increase this year since the passport and $1 rules have been implemented? There's actually 3 factors. The passport rule definitely reduces the number of entries. And if there are less entries, then that increases your chance of being selected. It's not very much, but somewhat, right? Same thing with the $1 rule. The $1 rule will probably reduce the number of entries, and therefore increase your chances of being selected. But also this point I was just making about the gap for the CSPA and the delay in the entry period, that probably is going to be more impactful than either of those other 2 things, because I think what they'll do is, in order to not have 130,000 people submitting DS260s, I think they'll probably select less people if they've got any sense at all. I mean, if they've got anybody with any intelligence left at the government that's not got into private business, then they will realize that if they select 130,000 people, that's a big amount of DS260s they have to process. And so one way of reducing that workload, because they're going to have less time than normal, is to reduce the number of people they select. So instead of selecting 130,000, maybe they should select less, right? Clever, huh? Come on, government, keep up. And so if they do that, then that's also going to be an improvement in your chances. So yeah, DV27 could be one of the best years in terms of your chance of getting selected, which means your chances will be 1 in 90 years instead of 1 in 100 years. So it'll be something like that, right? I'm active from Cameroon. I'm active from California. That's interesting. We must be relatives. Hi, Simon. When can AF 30,000 receive an email? Well, that case can receive an email now, right? The visa bulletin is now current for Africa up to 35,000. So between now and the end of this month, there are going to be people who are receiving 2NLs for January interviews, right? It continues up until the end of the month, roughly. And so, yes, you can receive an email now. Will you get an email now? Well, it depends on your embassy. It depends whether your DS260 is processed and so on. It's not quite as simple as that. And you don't mention which embassy you're at. So I can't tell you about backlog or anything like that. And actually, we don't have the data, right? We won't have the SEAC data until January 1st. By the way, SEAC went through a system update just recently to change the SEAC information, and that happened instantly without any outage. Amazing that. It must be a different department. Kindest says, I will always be grateful to you, Britt. I won DV21 and listened to you during my process, and now in Virginia with my family. Thank you, sir. Thank you for that lovely, kind message from Kindest. I appreciate that. Good luck in Virginia. I'm Qatar-born Indian. Can I apply? Yeah. So you're actually a Qatar, Qatari. Yes, you can apply, even though you describe yourself as Indian. You were actually born in Qatar, and it's the country of birth that's important for this process, not your country of citizenship or your current country of current residence. It's based on country of birth. So yes, you can apply. Hi, Simon. Is it okay to change the host address? So in my DS260, it's in New York. Now I got my visa. I paid the green card fee using the host address in Chicago. I won't have a problem. You guys love to mess with my dyslexia, don't you? I won't have a problem. What is that? So yeah, it's fine. You can always change the host address. There is no rule that says you have to live at the location you've stated in the DS260. There is no rule. Some people ask me, for example, they'll say, oh, I said I was going to live in California or something, and I'm entering via New York, and I'm now going to live in Texas. Does any of that matter? No, nobody gives a crap. Like nobody cares where you live, right? Once you enter the USA, you are totally free. You don't need papers to travel from one state to another state. You don't need to tell anyone in advance that you're going to live somewhere else. Now, as a new immigrant, as a green card holder, you do have to fill in an online form, the AR11, to update them of your address every time you move. You're supposed to do that every time you move, and I would do that if I were you. I would pay attention to that rule, because it is something that they can bring up. If you don't do it, they can bring it up later when you go for naturalization, right? So but it's very, very simple. They don't come and check on you living at your host address, as you said you were going to live at your host address. You're on your own now, right? They don't support you. They don't watch you. It's up to you, right? Now, the only problem that you're going to have is that the address in your DS-260 is where they will send the social security number and the green card, right? So you have to figure that bit out. You have to make sure that you're still going to be able to get your green card and so on. And updating the address on the AR11 website doesn't necessarily change where those things are delivered. The Social Security Office is not going to get that AR11 update, for example. They're still going to send that to your to the address in the DS-260. Okay. Good morning, sir. Just a quick one. Can someone appeal a DV visa refusal if they feel the consular misinterpreted their case, and if yes, how can someone go about the whole appeal process? Okay. There is this rule of non-reviewability of the consular officer decisions. Essentially, what it means is you don't have a formal appeal process in these consular processing interviews. However, mistakes are made sometimes. It does happen. They do make mistakes, and sometimes you can email the embassy after the interview. It's best to deal with it in the interview if you can. If you feel you're being incorrectly refused in the interview, it's best to bring that up very politely. Bearing in mind, the consular officer has the right to refuse you if they want to for any reason, right? They actually don't even have to justify that to you or anyone else, right? They are allowed to refuse you. They might say, I feel that this person is going to be a public charge, and therefore I'm refusing on public charge grounds. Or I wasn't satisfied with the documentation presented, blah, blah, blah. They can say anything they want, right? You're not entitled to a green card. You're not entitled to, you don't have rights in this process. That's the mental position I want you to be in, to understand that you don't have the rights. However, you can politely argue, right? You can politely say, I'm sorry, sir. I'm sorry, madam. I don't think you're adjudicating this correctly. Can I just, discuss this with you just for a moment more? Here's my document. Why I don't understand why you're refusing my document. Why do you think that's fraudulent? Here's another document I've got that proves that document is not fraudulent. Blah blah blah. Whatever is your argument, you can do that in the interview. But if you don't do that in the interview, then your only other choice is to email them after the interview and try and get them to restate the refusal and perhaps provide more information about the refusal. Now, if all of that fails, then you can go to a lawyer, and you can and there is something called LegalNet, which is which is a way that you can complain about an unfair refusal. However, the first thing you should do is really sort of email me or post a question to me explaining exactly why you think you've been refused incorrectly. More often than not, people don't understand the reason for their refusal, and they assume that they have been incorrectly refused, and more often than not, they're actually correctly refused. And so, why do you think you were incorrectly refused? You can explain that at britsimonsays.com, and I'll give you an opinion, and it will just be my opinion. You're free to ignore my opinion or whatever, but I'll give you an opinion about whether I think you were incorrectly refused or not. It has been the case in some cases in the past where people were absolutely determined that they were incorrectly refused, and I've actually said no. I would have refused you too. So it depends on the situation. It's not always possible for me to be able to give an opinion like that. But at least it will help you sort of understand whether you were correctly refused, incorrectly refused, and whether you should try and fight it. Since we're at the beginning of the year, there is plenty of time to fight it, right? So you can go through a process of fighting it. But as I said earlier, there isn't a formal appeal process. It's you still have to be polite about it because you're not entitled to an appeal. Okay. Okay, let's see. After having the interview, if you're accepted, do you have to enter within 6 months of the visa issue, or is it the medical? So when you're given the visa has an expiry date printed on it, and that expiry date is 6 months from the medical. So if you did the medical 2 or 3 weeks before the interview, which is fairly normal, a couple of weeks, 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, something like that, then you will have lost some of that 6 months time already by the time you have the interview and receive your printed visa, right? So you probably only have about 5 months left. Once you get your passport back, you probably only have 5 months. However, you can enter the USA within that time period. You can enter the USA and immediately leave. You don't have to make that final move. You can enter the USA, go back home, tidy up whatever affairs you need to tidy up, sell the house, sell the dog, whatever you have to do, and then move later. You can do that. Okay. And I know that seems like a ridiculous statement to some people who see the price of an air ticket as being, an unbelievable amount of money. But, you just have to understand the concept, the mindset of Americans thinking, yeah, okay, you can fly here this week and then come back in 2 weeks' time. To us, it's not such a big deal. So, that you'll adjust it for your own situation, of course. Imagine the year I learn about this. There's this drastic delay. Yeah, some people always feel like that. Hey, I'm from Germany. First time competing. Are there common mistakes to avoid in the lottery? Yeah, good question. The most common reason that people get disqualified from the lottery process itself before they even found out they were drawn is for the photo. It's unbelievable to me, but it's the case. And I think I've given you these numbers before, so I'll explain it again. The way the process works is everybody gets every entry gets numbered, right? The numbers are assigned totally randomly. The order of the numbers is completely random. So basically, they take all of the entries within a region. Let's say they're doing this for Africa region. Let's say they have 10 million entries, right? So they've got 10 million entries. They jumble all of those entries up. They're totally randomly ordered now, and they number them from 1 to 10 million. And then they pick the first 100,000 numbers, and they go through those 100,000 numbers, and they disqualify cases based on fraudulent reasons and photos, right? And so I know about 10% of all cases get refused or are sort of fraudulent cases. They get pulled out. But if I take that 1 to 100,000 number as being the winning number range, and I do that same thing for Europe, because they have, from 1 to 50,000, let's say. So that would be 150,000 total numbers, and then Asia, and then Oceania, and so on. If I take all of those numbers up and I look at DV25, there are 57.5% of all of those numbers that are holes, right? 57.5%. Now, about 10%, I've seen statements by the government in court case, affidavits that they've filed, which said that in DV25 they had about a 10% fraudulent rejection thing. So if 57% are gone, they've been rejected before the announcement of the results, and 10% are for fraud. That means 47% are for other reasons, which is generally speaking the photos, right? So if you take a photo of yourself and it doesn't meet the requirements, you're out. If you take a photo of one of your kids or your spouse and it doesn't meet the requirements, you're out, right? Numerically, you were in that first winning range, but you got yourself disqualified before the announcement of the results because you couldn't take a bloody photo. So where's my little banner? Hang on a minute. So I've got a solution for you. You go to dvphototool.com, which is a website we've created between myself and another lottery winner. And we're using AI in the same way that the government use AI to go through all of these photos and reject the photos. We're using AI to apply the DV lottery rules. So for a few bucks, and yes, it costs a few bucks, $6 for your first photo. It's $5 if you do more than one photo. So it's not a lot of money. But anyway, for each of those photos, each one of them is checked by AI. So you take a selfie, you upload it in our website. The software will remove the background, which is one of the things that you should do. You should have a totally white background. So we remove the background, make it a white background, and then the software will position the photo correctly. The positioning of the eyes and the features of the face are very important because the government use facial recognition software. So the positioning is very critical. So our software deals with that, right? And then it goes through a number of checks to make sure that you're, for example, not wearing glasses, that you're not smiling, that you're not wearing a hat or whatever. And so it goes through and applies all of the checks that we can. And it doesn't do a perfect job yet. We're working on it still. There are some ways that you can fool it quite funnily. But for most people who are trying seriously to create a good photo, this is the simplest way you can do it, and it's the most compliant way you can do it. It's the best one that's out there, and it's actually cheaper than most of the other websites by half. So I'm really proud of dvphototool.com. I hope when the DV27 entry period opens, I hope you will use it. Partly because I've invested a lot of money in it, and so that's one of the reasons I hope you use it. But also, I hope to reduce that 57% number. That number, I go to bed dreaming about that 57.45%. That's what it is, and it drives me nuts. 57.45% of people get disqualified from the lottery process. So, that's more than half the people. Are just never going to see, you have been selected. They're never going to see that letter because in a lot of people's cases, they're not doing the photo correctly. So that's the main thing. So that's the main thing I would say is the biggest difference you can make in your chances of selection is just take the bloody photo correctly. Okay, so let's see. Let's see. Let's take some more questions. Hi, so I'm Vitalis here. Vitalis, interesting name, sounds Greek. Thank you so much for the help you're giving to many people who don't know. I'm AF16K, so not Greek then, with a family of 6. Is it okay to get many affidavits from friends in the US? Why would you get many affidavits? I think you're probably talking about affidavit of support. It's really interesting. The government just published some information that seems to suggest that they're going to no longer accept the I-134. They are able to change the rules like this, but it's kind of an odd thing for them to do because the I-134 is the affidavit of support they've relied on for DV lottery for a number of years. But there is a general rule that applies to all immigration cases that you must not become a public charge. You must not be likely to become a public charge. In other words, the consular officer has to feel assured in some way that you will be able to afford to support yourself in the USA and you won't rely on public assistance, which is government assistance, mainly federal government assistance, but all forms really. Um, and so in a lot of people's cases, that meant that having an I-134 was the most reliable way to get out of the concern. However, they're now saying that they are going to take other circumstances into account more heavily and not rely on the I-134. This guidance was published by Marco Rubio, the little man, and we'll have to wait and see if the FAM guide is updated. But apparently, it was sent by cable. It's reported as being sent by cable to all the embassies. So we'll begin to hear whether they're no longer using the I-134. There are embassies that specify the I-134 as being part of their process. So it's really interesting to me to see whether those embassies will now remove that guidance, which would tell me that they're taking this instruction from Rubio more seriously. So we'll have to wait and see whether that's the case or not. But in the world where the I-134, which is an affidavit of support, in the world where that is used, only one is necessary, because each time you present an I-134, it is verified against the federal poverty guidelines, right? And you either meet the federal poverty guidelines or you don't. If you don't, then your form is useless, right? And if you don't meet the federal poverty guidelines, frankly, you haven't got enough money to save anybody, right? You can barely feed yourself. You can barely get by yourself. So what the hell are you doing filling out a form saying you'll look after some other people, right? So having lots of people that fill out I-134s for you and none of them meet the federal poverty guidelines, it's kind of a waste of your time and everybody else's time. Having one person that fills in an I-134 is enough. That's all you need, right? Now, people are going to have to get a little bit more creative with the way that they satisfy this, these new requirements. If the I-134 is not being used, the consular officer will ask about your own savings. They'll ask about your job prospects. They'll ask what you're trained to do, what you plan to do, and so on. So it's going to be kind of interesting to see how that plays out in some of these embassies. We'll have to wait and see. Just here for the entertaining education you provide. Thank you, Confusion. Lucky yes, yeah. I am Nigerian, and am I eligible? I think, are you the Nigerian that asked earlier with your Ugandan wife? I already explained that one, but as a Nigerian, I was about to say as a straight Nigerian, doesn't matter whether you're straight or not straight, but as a Nigerian, not married to someone from an eligible country, then you are not eligible to participate in the lottery. No. Hi Simon, AF 20,000 Accra. Submitted my DS260 in September. Should I be looking forward to receiving 2NL by the end of the month? Thanks. Since you were so late in submitting the DS260, I would be surprised if it was already processed. Having said that, it does happen sometimes that people submit the DS260 and it's processed very quickly. But there would have been a backlog of people that submitted in May and June, July and August prior to your submission in September. And so I think they're probably still working on that backlog. However, weird things happen sometimes, so some cases get processed very quickly. Other cases, I heard from someone the other day who had submitted their DS260 in May and is still being told it's not processed yet. So not all cases process at the same speed. Some take longer than others. And it partly depends on where you're born and where you've lived and what work you do and what your name is and everything else. So sometimes it's a bit random. The delays can feel a bit random. You can have two people live in the same city, always lived in the same city. Both of them work for the same bank, and one will take, no time to be processed, and the other one will take much longer. And it may be as simple as their name matches someone on the terror list. It isn't right. It isn't them, but it seems like it needs further investigation, and therefore it takes longer. So yeah, you probably won't get your interview this month. I also don't know how many cases ACRA is taking. So everybody with a case number lower than yours that was processed before you is going to be interviewed before you, right? And so if ACRA are limiting the number of interviews that they have, then there's going to be a backlog that's built up at that embassy, and that can take some time as well. So chances are you won't get your interview this month, basically. But let me know. Actually, I'd be interested. Please let me know either on another live or at BritSimonSays.com. Please let me know. That's helpful for us to know. Okay, submitted in September and got interviewed. That would be interesting. Thank you. Hello, Brit Simon. DV25, case number 19K. When is it likely to get my 2NLs? Kenya. Okay, hopefully you made a mistake. You're DV26, not DV25. If you're DV25, it's over. There is no further processing after the end of the year. But if you're a DV26 winner and 19K, then you may get your interview in the next couple of weeks. But I'm thinking that the Kenyan embassy is probably still backlogged, and it will probably be in a month or two before you get your 2NL. Okay, so you have to wait and see. Nas, hey Simon, maybe you answered that question before. Probably, I don't know what the question is, but probably answered it before. But why are some countries like Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan eligible to Europe? Oh, okay. So yeah, so this is the sort of the Asia versus Europe thing. The political boundaries that America has organized the world in doesn't necessarily agree with what the rest of us in the rest of the world think of as being Asia or Europe and so on. And it's based on American perspective of the world, right? So at some point in the past, they've decided that Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan, etc., were just, it just looks like Europe to me. That's, I mean, bearing in mind we're talking about Americans, and we're talking about quite a long time ago when these decisions were made. And so, yeah, it probably just looks like, oh, that's just further over that side of Europe. It looks like, it's somewhere just past Paris, right? Uzbekistan. It's just over the hill from Paris. It must be, right? The Americans are not very good at geography. I mean, they couldn't pick out Kazakhstan or Uzbekistan on a map if you gave them $1,000. Most of them, they could not do it. I could, and I had a conversation with my daughter yesterday, and I'm going to work on her skills because I'm not sure she could. And so, yeah, it just dawned on me yesterday that the education system in this country isn't, I mean, I've got to find a map of Europe, for example, with the boundaries, but without the country names, and put it in front of my daughter and say, hey, you've traveled through most of those countries. Surely you know what the difference is between Italy and France, and so we'll see. I hope she's going to get that right. Florence, will you be my host? I'm already manifesting a win. I do get these sort of requests from time to time. I don't think my wife would appreciate me packing the house full of ready foreigners, ready to make their life over here. I'm afraid I can't do that. I have some spare rooms, but no, I can't host you, I'm afraid. I know there is another YouTuber that sort of went into the hosting thing, and I don't know if she's still doing that. I think she probably still is. And she bought a couple of houses to rent to willing people, new immigrants. I'm not quite going to do that. I'll leave that to others. But yes, good luck with your win anyway. Former Go plaintiff here, planning to apply for a student visa for law school next year. Any risk related to my former DV status? Winner, but never had an interview. Oh, okay. No risk at all. The fact that you sued the government is fine. I've sued the government, right? I was part of I wasn't a plaintiff, but I was part of those lawsuits. I remember quite vividly one of the government lawyers getting all pissy about me because they were reading out my expert testimony, and the US attorney for the government was like, who is this guy? Like, how dare he pretend to be an expert on this thing? What is his credentials? And Judge Mehta just shut the guy down and just said, "Oh, get on with it," let's not make a big scene over it, sort of thing. But yeah, it was almost like the government lawyer was asking, where did he get his degree in DV lottery? That's what this guy wanted. Guy's a bloody buffoon. I'd love to know which lawyer that was. I can't remember, but anyway, I remember it vividly I was listening in, and I was chuckling my butt off. But anyway, being a plaintiff, one of the things you're going to learn as you go through your law thing is that your education is that they're not actually allowed to retaliate. There's a non-retaliation perspective, so they can't retaliate. So there is no harm. The fact that you tried to sue the government, that you were a plaintiff on a lawsuit to sue the government, there's no harm in that. You'll be absolutely fine, right? But good luck. Good luck with your law degree. It's awesome. Do you think many countries are getting eliminated from participating? No. The barrier to whether you can participate or not in the DV 2027 or any of the lottery periods is based on a mathematical formula. And that formula is a rolling 5-year window, 50,000 immigrants in that previous 5 years, in 3 certain categories, basically family-based and immediate relative categories. 3 categories, right? So even if your country, for example, had a massive sort of flow of asylum seekers, that would not change that 50,000 number, right? And so that there hasn't been a big increase in immigration. In fact, the reverse. COVID years actually reduced immigration. So if anything, more countries, like what happened with the UK, more countries came into the frame rather than being eliminated. Cuba was eliminated for 2026, but I'm not expecting any other countries, or many other countries, as you seem to think, to be eliminated. And by the way, Trump doesn't get to say which countries are able to participate or not. He can ban the entry of an immigrant into the country. He's got that right. But he can't ban countries from participating in the DV lottery. And in some cases, people will be able to get an exemption if they've got a second passport and that sort of thing. So even if you're from a travel banned country, you're still able to participate in the lottery. Okay, and you should do, because the travel ban, hopefully by some point in time, will be removed. Right. Hello, on my DS260, I listed all of my work experience. Afford most of these certificates. MIS certificates. Is it a big deal? I have a bachelor's degree. Oh, I see what you're saying. Get the proof that you went through a formal course of education before you went to university, right? Get that. Yes, it's good that you got your bachelor's certificate, your degree for your bachelor's. But some CEOs will ask for the proof of high school, etc., that got you to the point when you could enter university. And they want to know that you went through a formal course of education in order to get into university. Okay, so do get some proof, even if it's not paying for all of the certificates, right? Get some proof. Oh, okay. Sorry, and I've just realized I've misread that. You're talking about work experiences. You definitely don't have to provide work experiences. I see why you mentioned the bachelor's degree now. I saw the bachelor's degree and I thought that was, you're asking about other education, like high school education. You don't provide work experience certificates. You don't do that, right? Particularly if you meet the requirements for education anyway, you don't have to provide any documentation for that. Now, if you're going through a work experience case where you don't meet the education standard, but your work experience does meet the standard, then yes, you put a bit more effort into that. But generally speaking, that's very unusual to be asked for any work certificates or anything like that. It's very unusual. Let's see. The DV tool accept the AI generated photos. Is that normal? Oh, is it normal that the DV? Okay, the DV photo tool uses AI to take out the background and that sort of thing. That's okay. That's acceptable. There is a part. One of the rules in DV lottery photos is that they mustn't be digitally altered. But what they're referring to is the subject, not the background. The subject. The subject must not be digitally altered. Right. So if you've got I don't know, a big birthmark in there, and you say, "Oh, I don't like that. I'm going to take that out." That's enough to get you disqualified. Right. So you must not alter that, that image of yourself. The background is not important, and in fact, it needs to be blank. Right. So so that's not a problem. That's why our dvphototool.com. That's how it works. It removes that background. Okay. Why is DV website is not opening? Because it's broken, because they're Muppets. Hey Brett, what are the current changes in nursing profession, and what's the effect of this? I don't know. Oh, I know what you're talking about. So there was a reclassification of the education level for some education types, whether those are professional or not, right? It doesn't really, I don't think it affects DV lottery in any way. And so I'm not going to sort of go into it very much. It's just another moronic thing. There's a sort of, the current administration is not the brightest bunch of folks, right? And so they attack, they describe intelligence as being elite, right? If you're intelligent, and you're able to use critical thinking skills and that sort of thing, or you've been through an education course to to get some sort of professional qualification, those things make you better than most of the MAGA Muppets, right? I mean, you just are, right? Let's be honest. The education level of MAGA supporters is quite low. I mean, it really is. It's not just me saying that. That is verifiably accurate information. The education level of people that support Trump is on average lower than normal people, right? Because you'd have to be dumb as a rock to believe that that guy was going to fix your problems. But anyway, never mind. So there's this sort of backlash against intelligence that's going on in America at the moment, right? And they call intelligent people elites. And and the MAGA Muppets are running around sort of, we're going to hang the elites. Like, you stupid people, it's like, so this sort of dumbing down of the profession thing with regard to education is just another example of that. It doesn't really sort of affect DV lottery in any way, I don't think. It's just another example of stupidity by the current administration. They're pandering to stupid people is all it is. But anyway, Kenneth, yeah, so that's good. Respected sir. Oh, I like that. I like the way you started that question. Respected sir. What should I do if I don't have affidavit support documents, but I have all other documents on my interview on Monday? Interesting. Well, in some embassies, they won't ask very much about your financial background. In some embassies, they might be impressed if you have a host, for example. That might help them overcome any fears about public charge. If you've got your own savings, if you've got liquid savings, money in the bank, that's what I mean. I don't mean you take a bottle of water to the interview. That's not what I mean by liquid savings. And I don't want you to take cash to the interview to show how wealthy you are. I mean, a bank statement or something in your name where you've got an amount of money. And failing that, just what's your plan? How are you going to survive in America? How are you going to move there? Is there someone helping you? Or how will you find your first job? Have you thought about that? How will you pay for health insurance? The cost of health insurance has gone up dramatically. And the current administration will probably start to ask people about how they're going to get health insurance. So have you been onto healthcare.gov and checked out the price of health insurance? When they say, well, it's going to cost you $1,000 a month for a health insurance plan, how are you going to pay for that? you better have a good answer, right? You better say, yes, but I'm going to qualify for a subsidy, or you better have an answer of how you're going to have health insurance, because if you don't have health insurance and you have an accident, you then have to rely on someone saving your life, etc. And taxpayers pay for that, right? So that's not really great, right? So how are you gonna convince the CO that you're not going to be a public charge? Put some thought into it, but it'll be interesting to see what they say. And if if they ask for something, if they're going to refuse you on public charge grounds, typically they give you some time to provide other documentation to say how you're going to support yourself. So you'll be refused under 221G, which means that you can overcome that refusal by providing some extra documentation. And so you would have time to overcome that. They very rarely refuse public charge cases, refusals right there and then at the interview. They don't typically refuse those finally. They typically put them on 221G. You've got some chance to overcome it. Okay. Okay, let's see. In 26, my age will be 21 years old. Then I apply for DV27. Okay, don't forget, you can apply for DV lottery even under 21, right? But if you're 20 years old, you can be on your parents' application. If they apply, you can be a derivative of theirs, but you can also apply for yourself as well. If you're 18, 19, 20, you can apply for yourself, right? Even at 17, you can apply for yourself. I was contacted by someone at 16. I think 16 is probably a bit too young, because you can't really have met the education requirement at 16. You also, you couldn't do very much in America, so you would be a public charge concern. A 16-year-old coming to America, not these days. It doesn't really make sense. But if you're a little bit older, yeah, you can apply. What about CSB, Casablanca Embassy? So I understand that CSB has taken some interviews, but not very many. So that's kind of interesting. We don't know whether they'll get a second batch in this month for January interviews, but right now they've only taken a few, is my understanding. So we have to wait and see. Okay, and we'll have the data on January 1. Fedman says sup. That's sup. Hello, on my DS260, I listed all my work experiences, but I couldn't afford most of these certificates. Oh, sorry, we've already answered that one. Somebody here received 2NL at Abu Dhabi. I don't know. What habit to 2020? What habit? What happened? What happened to 2020? DV 2020 is over. It's done. We had lawsuits. We did achieve quite a big win. We got an extra 7,000 visas issued in between September 4th of 2020 and September 30th. An extra 7,000 visas were issued because of the lawsuit. But then later on appeal, they disallowed our ability to continue after the end of the year. So, unfortunately, that's now finished. That's over. Okay. How long does it take a US citizen to their spouse to the US? It can take a couple of years for a green card holder, at least, to sponsor someone. For a citizen, I mean, bear in mind, it takes, if you get a green card through the DV lottery, you then have to live in the USA for 5 years before you can apply to be naturalized, to become a US citizen. As a citizen, you can sponsor someone a bit faster than a green card holder, but you've waited 5 years to that point. So most people, if they're looking to sponsor their spouse that didn't come with them for some reason as part of the DV lottery, they'll do it as a green card holder. And then it takes, 2 to 3, sometimes up to 4 years to do that. Okay, so it can take a while as a green card holder. Okay. Hi, Brit, South Africa, AF189X, submitted DS260 on May 3rd, like immediately. Current for January, but still not processed. There you go. There's one of the ones. Is it taking long because I've never been to the US, but have a US college listing because I studied online? that is a bit weird. Yeah, it might have picked up a red flag. They might have said, this guy says he's been to US college, but I see nothing in the travel history, and therefore they might have sort of red flagged that for someone to look at and look at a bit deeper, and then hopefully it says online or something like that. That could be the reason. I don't know if it is the reason. It could be lots of other reasons, right? Just don't know, right? That's the frustrating part. We don't know why those things are delayed sometimes. So, you know, you'll have to wait and see, I'm afraid. Hello, Simon. I work as an engineer in my country, and my wife is a data engineer in a multinational company. And our English is excellent. Yes, it is. She has type 1 diabetes. We won DV26. Can diabetes affect us? No, it doesn't really affect you. It's not an ineligibility. There's some recent discussion about, refusing people with diabetes, etc. But what it means is those people have to have a medical health policy to cover their diabetes so that they don't become a public charge. That's how they're going to implement that rule. It doesn't really mean that they don't want people with diabetes. Diabetes is not a spreadable disease, and therefore isn't an ineligibility in the same way that some other diseases are. But so the only question that they might be able to raise is the public charge question, and that you can overcome by explaining how you're going to pay for health insurance, right? And in your case, as you say, your wife is a data engineer. Good job, right? She's likely to get a reasonably well-paid job over here. Your English is excellent. You probably won't have a problem in proving that you're going to be able to support yourselves, and therefore you would get health insurance. And by the way, you can take a health insurance policy for the period of time between arriving and when you start a job. It might take you a month or 6 weeks or 8 weeks or something to get a job. And so during that time period, what do you do? If you've got a health event, you need some sort of insurance to cover that, right? So you can get that policy. In fact, if you Google Brit Simon health insurance, I think, you'll find an article where I explain all of that, and I recommend a certain company who provide these policies. And I looked around for a lot of time. I only found one place where you could get the sort of insurance that you would need to cover you temporarily. So that's why I recommend it in my blog at BritSimonSays.com. Okay. If someone is on H-1B visa and spouse is H-4 visa, but wife belongs to DV eligible country, it means she belongs to the country where the green card is current. Is there a fast process to get the green card? Oh God, what are you trying to say here? It means she belongs to the country where the green card is current. So look, the DV lottery is a lottery. You're saying DV, DV, but it's DV lottery. It's a lottery. So she has to win the DV lottery. That's the first thing, right? You could win the DV lottery as well. Even though your country is not eligible, you could charge to your wife's country of eligibility. So you can enter the lottery. But that doesn't mean that she can then accelerate her H-4 to green card status because, because it's some sort of, you still got to go through the DV lottery process, right? You still got to win. You still got to be selected. You still got to wait for your number to be available. You can adjust status from H-4 to green card, yes, but only once your number is available, etc. There's no fast path, around that. Okay. Hello, Brit Simon. Glad to see you live again. GG for our DV interview this week. OC 1000-ish. Good luck. I'm sure you're all ready. Hey, Joe. Greetings from Switzerland. Hope it's all good there. I love Switzerland, actually. Geneva I spent quite a bit of time in Geneva. Beautiful, beautiful place. How much do you think the $1 application fee plus the potential passport rule will affect the odds for applicants this upcoming cycle? I think I've talked about it. It will reduce, both of those measures will reduce the number of entries. So if in a normal year there's 20 million entries And because of these two new rules, if they both get implemented, we don't know that for sure, but let's say it reduces to 10 million, then your odds have sort of doubled, right? Because they're still going to select people, probably about 100,000 people. So now you've got 100,000 people out of 10 million entries instead of 100,000 people out of 20 million entries. So yeah, your chances of selection have gone up quite a bit. But we have to also see how many people they select. Okay. Hi, sir. Suppose someone submits the DS-260 of derivatives at different dates. Can it have negative consequences? Not really. I wouldn't do that personally. I would submit them all at the same time. I would work on all the DS-260s and submit at the same time. But I don't think there's negative consequences of doing that. And in some cases, it's absolutely required, because you might have a baby after you've submitted your DS-260s. You could have a baby, and therefore you're going to add a DS-260 later. You could get married, and therefore you're going to add a DS-260, right? So it's not a problem. There's no technical problem with it. It's just you wouldn't normally do that, and if you're all ready to enter, right? I won a lottery and a fraudulent derivative was added on my DS-260. Okay. I reported the issue immediately to KCC. During interview, what documents can I present? Well, you'll have to explain why somebody was able to access your form, right? That is your responsibility. You were unwise enough to give your information to someone who fraudulently added this derivative. At the very least, you're an unwise person, right? And they may think that you are in cahoots with this person, right? So you can expect some questioning about it, right? It didn't just happen randomly without your knowledge and without your being unwise. At the very least, as I say, you were unwise enough to let someone enter your form by giving them too much information. Remember, they needed to have your confirmation number, your case number, your name, your date of birth, right? They needed all that information. Why the hell are you giving all of that information to someone? That means that you are at the very least unwise, right? And possibly you were involved in this fraud. That will be the consideration, right? But for God's sake, be honest. Don't bullshit. They can spot liars a mile off. They are trained to spot liars, right? So, just if you made a mistake, don't lie about it. Just try and be honest and fall on the sword, and hopefully you'll be okay. Okay. Let me just enlarge on that a little bit. Let's say you entered through an internet cafe or something, and the guy who was running the internet cafe has an ugly, kind of homely looking sister, but she's never going to get married, and so he's trying to marry her off and send her to America, right? And I'm sorry to make it humorous, but you gotta laugh. And he said, "Don't worry, I'm going to add my sister onto your form, and we'll get you married, and then she'll go and I'll pay you $10,000, right?" You have to explain that conversation happened, but you said, "I refuse the $10,000 and I don't want that person." But unfortunately, that person somehow had access to your form because they had helped you with the process of filling in the DS-260. And so, you have to explain that. Don't go there and say, "Well, I looked one day and someone's just been randomly added," come on. Nobody believes that, because you had to give them all that information. So be honest. For goodness sake, be honest, and hopefully it will be okay. Okay, and if it isn't, well, that's a life lesson. Oh wow, we've got a book here from Dejan. So, sir, I won the DV Lottery 23. Oh, but my number never came current. I enter the lottery each year, but think winning the lottery in 2023 ruined my chances of getting a US tourist visa, since I applied last year and was denied. I'm from Europe, by the way, but from a non-EU country. Do you think voting for the DV lottery but not getting through will always be noted somewhere in the US system? No, your assumption is incorrect. Entering the lottery does not make you ineligible for a tourist visa, but many people get refused a tourist visa because there is an assumption that those people won't go home at the end of the visa period, right? Now, if you apply for the lottery and you win and you submit the DS-260, now you have demonstrated immigrant intent. But that never happened. Well, enter the lottery. Oh, you did win in 23. You never became current. And you probably submitted your DS-260, right? Yeah, okay. All right, so backtrack. Forget everything I just said. Yes. The fact that you submitted the DS-260 was a declaration of the immigrant intent that you have. You intend or you want to be an immigrant in the USA. And so, yes, that is always on your record, and it can affect your tourist visa situation. Voting for the DV lottery, but not getting through. Yeah, I'm assuming that you submitted your DS-260. That's the key piece. If you submit your DS-260, that can make it more difficult to get non-immigrant visas in the future. It doesn't make it impossible. You have to sort of demonstrate very carefully, demonstrate that you intend to return. It's helpful to have, for example, a job and family and ties. They describe it as ties to your home country, meaning, you say, look, I own this property, I own this apartment or whatever. I've got family that rely on me. My mother is getting old. I have to return for that. But I plan to spend 2 months in America, and then I will return. As long as they believe you'll return, they can still approve your case, even though you once submitted a DS-260. But it does make it obviously a little bit more of a risk that you won't return, right? Because you do have immigrant intent. Okay, that's it. Hi, sir. By nationality, I'm Pakistani, and Pakistani is not eligible to apply for DV lottery. But I was born in UAE in 2002. Can I apply for lottery? Yes, you can, because you were born in the UAE. As long as you've got, oh, there you go. I also have my birth certificate of UAE. I was about to say, as long as you've got your birth certificate that shows you were born in the UAE, then yes, you are eligible to enter. Okay. Is the DV program state website down? Yes, it is. Has been for 3 days, these bunch of Muppets. Russia cannot use credit cards, so they are completely eliminated. No, there'll be some way that you can take, that you can make a $1 payment in Russia, even in Russia. There'll be some way of doing that. I don't know what it will be, but there will be a way of doing that, right? Hello, Simon. I'm an Eritrean winner, but it's travel ban country, and I have a travel document for Uganda. And now even Uganda is included within the travel ban countries. So we shall not go to the USA because of that, or no? Yeah, you're banned twice. That's pretty horrible. While the travel ban is in place, you won't get around it unless you have the passport of a second country, which is not travel banned. Your second passport, unfortunately, is also travel banned. And so, yeah, I don't see a way you can get around it, really. Let's just hope that the travel ban is removed at some point. I just don't know when that's going to be. Can you use somebody else's card to make the $1 USD payment, or you must use your own? You can use somebody else's, is my understanding. And there will be people that, for example, go to an internet cafe or something, and the cafe will pay that money for them, using a debit card or something. There will be that sort of situation. Okay. I heard that Sudanese nationals are unable to apply for the DV due to being blacklisted. Please confirm this. That's not true. So look, try and separate in your mind the difference between applying for the DV lottery and getting approved for the visa. There's two different things. People from Sudan are able to apply for the lottery. And if the travel ban is removed, then they will be able to get approved. But while the travel ban is in place, then they can't get approved, right? But you can apply. And, if you enter DV 2027 and you're selected, then maybe the travel ban will be removed by then, right? What happens if you win the lottery and are selected, but you also have been accepted to a 2-year master's program in Canada, for example? Do you have to forfeit your education then? Well, it would be up to you to decide how you want to try and maintain your residence in the USA. But you know, 2-year master's program in Canada, why wouldn't you just turn around and say do a master's program in America, right? You know, you don't have to forfeit your education, as you say, but what you can do is you could apply for a re-entry permit. So you could enter the USA as a new immigrant. You get your green card status, you're an LPR, and then you file a form called the I-131, which is a re-entry permit, which gives you, I always thought, by the way, this was up to 2 years, but I heard a lawyer the other day saying it gives you up to 3 years. I didn't know that. I have to look into that. But it gives you, to my knowledge, it gives you at least 2 years that you can be out of the country. And so that's how you would get around it. You would do that, you know, that would be your thing. But you have to be in America for a few weeks while you start off that I-131 process. You have to attend a biometrics interview and that sort of thing. So yeah, that's how you could do it. These buffoons don't know what the hell they are doing. That's very true. So all Africa is in banned, so it's with DV lottery. Any problem for DV26 winner? No, all Africa is not banned. So you know, there are some banned countries. There's a lot of banned countries in Africa, yes, but there's a lot of other people who are not banned in Africa. Okay. Is it possible that I send my information to a relative in the US that is my passport size photo? Passport size photo, names, date of birth, place of birth, and she applies for me? Yes, absolutely. There's no problem with that. That can be done. Lots of people do that. Hi, Simon. Is there any new changes, update, or same information that you enlightened us on about in your last, in the last video about DV2627? No new updates. I will publish new updates, particularly about DV27. There's a lot of excitement about that at the moment. I get a lot of hits on my videos about DV27 entry for some reason. So that tells me there's a lot of people who are interested in DV lottery still. You know, my normal videos maybe get 5,000 to 10,000 views. My videos about DV27 have got 20, 30, 40,000 views. So there's a lot of people who are interested in that, who are not my subscribers, not followers, not current winners, but they're interested in that, right? So, you know, so there is clearly a lot of interest still in the DV lottery. That's what that tells me. So yes, if I get any more news, I will publish it for sure. Hi, Simon. I've renewed my passport, though I'm Sierra Leonean banned citizen. If I got selected, can I use my Liberian passport to travel as a dual citizen? Yes, absolutely, you could. That's exactly what you would do. So, yep. Hi, Simon. Are you a visa officer by any chance? No, I'm not. God, no. No, I couldn't afford to live on that salary, actually. So, no. Ambiko, watching from Kenya, will there be DV27 this year? Yes, they will, Biko. They will be. As the primary applicant that comes from an eligible country in Africa, but currently lives in Canada with his family, can I go alone to the interview, or do I have to bring my entire family, wife and kids? If you want the wife and kids to get the green cards, then yes, you take them to the interview. If you don't want them to get the green cards, then you don't have to take them to the interview. But yeah, I mean, is it really a problem taking the wife and kids to the interview? I don't know. Oh, same person's second question. Second question is, can I settle down in the USA first and then bring my family later? Yes, you can do that. But if you do that outside of the DV lottery, so if you, for example, you went to the interview and only you got the green card, therefore, and then you plan to bring them later, that's going to take a lot more time. It's much more complex. It's much more expensive than taking them through the DV lottery. It's far better, in my opinion, to take them to the DV lottery interview, get them the visas, and then you go ahead of them, go a few months ahead of them to America to establish yourself, to earn some money in America and so on, get an apartment where you can all live and so on, right? It's better, in my opinion, to do that and then have them come later when you're ready for them, okay? Can someone tell me why the website is closed? Because they're Muppets. That's why. It's just they broke it. They broke it. There's nothing more interesting than that. Some people have tried to say, "Oh, it means this or it means that." No, it just means that they're muppets. They don't know what they're doing. That's all. Hi, Simon. I submitted my DS260 at different months with my derivatives. Will this be captured in the 2NL, or how can I ensure theirs will be processed too? They will be processed. They will be processed by the time you go for interview, I'm sure. Okay, a couple more quick questions, and I'm going to call it a day. Hi, Simon. I am Sri Lanka. I have faced DV interview last July 25. I have education qualification, but unfortunately my visa was refused. If I select another time, could I attend the interview? You can, but you're obviously going to have to go prepared to explain why you think you're eligible this time when you were denied last time. Is your education not meeting the requirements? Then it will still not meet the requirements, right? But maybe by that time you'll be in a job where you can meet the qualifications through work experience rather than education. But be careful about that. Okay. Okay. Last question here. Hi Simon. For how long can it take for administrative processing? Because I got a refusal and the officer remained with my academic documents that they will have to first review it. It can take different lengths of time. Administrative processing, we used to call it that. We now refer to it as 221G. That can take from a few days while they check documents and then they issue the approval, or sometimes it can take several months where they're doing background checking and that sort of thing. There's really no sort of standard time. It depends on the situation in your particular case. Okay, we'll call that a day. Call that a day. Just quick plug. If you want a photo for DV27, best way to do it is through dvphototool.com. Please do that. If you have a question that I didn't get to that you want to ask, please go to BritSimonSays.com. Look at that. It's there. BritSimonSays.com. Go to BritSimonSays.com and ask your question there. I answer all the questions on BritSimonSays.com, all of them. I do this every single day of the week. I do it 365 days a year. I answer your questions. I don't charge anybody any money. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a consular officer, as someone asked me today. But I just do this because I want to pay it forward. I want to get, to help many of you. And I think I've helped well over 100,000 people over my years of helping people. Well over 100,000 people by now have used my information and processed their cases. And that just, makes me very, very happy that I've been able to do that. All right, everybody, call that a day. Keep well. Please do subscribe. Oh, I've got about 1,500 subscribers left before the 100,000 mark. I'm excited about that. I don't know why, but yes, please do subscribe if you haven't already. Thanks, then. Bye-bye.